I really and truly believe that being ridiculously delusional is one of the most effective ways to have a truly extraordinary life. Like, if you are constantly playing by the rules, letting other people decide your limits, only playing it safe of like, oh, I'll just try and achieve a little bit more, you're not gonna do anything really spectacular. And if you have big hopes and dreams, if you truly want to experience everything that this life has to offer, you have to be at least a little bit delusional. You have to be willing to believe that something is possible for you before the physical reality presents evidence for it. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people get a few very key things wrong about the principle of delusion, and that stops them from making any sort of progress. It either keeps them in a spot where they're living purely in this fantasy land, ignoring reality and wondering why they're not getting anywhere, or just feeling straight up cynical of like, okay, well, why would I possibly imagine something that couldn't possibly be real for me? That's not for people like me. So, the key points I want to make are, one, that delusion is a skill, just like anything else, and you can build it to your advantage. Two, that there's a lot of science to back it up, and I'm going to go over all of that for you so you can learn how to actually work with your brain instead of against it. It's literally designed in a way that we can hijack it to our benefit, which is awesome. And we're also going to talk about something I like to call the GPS principle, which is what keeps most people stuck with these fantastical dreams and no way to get to them. Okay? So my name is Sydney. I've spent the last 15 or so years learning everything I can about personal development, manifestation, productivity, like combining the woo-woo with the actual implementation. And I've developed a philosophy that's helped me achieve some really ridiculous goals and also helps the people I coach one-on-one and in my cohorts make much bigger progress towards their hopes and dreams. And so I'm going to teach you everything I've learned about that today right here, and I think it's going to be really valuable. So grab a notebook if you're ready to actually start dreaming a lot bigger and having the tools to execute on those dreams. So just to start off with, like when I'm talking about being ridiculously delusional and the skill of being delusional, what am I talking about? Because I think there's oftentimes two groups of people. There's a group of people who's like, hell yeah, like let's be delusional, let's dream big fancy dreams and just kind of hope they come true. Or the people who see this and are like, you have to be realistic. Like, why are you being delusional? You're never going to get anywhere like that. You have to actually face the facts and understand what's going on and try and live within your bounds, because otherwise you'll be massively disappointed. And if you fall into either of those categories, I think I'm going to be able to help you make this actually work for you. Because what most people miss is that in order to have success with dreaming really big, being really delusional, actually giving your wildest fantasies a chance to be said out loud, to be explored, you first have to be the most realistic person in the room about where you are right now. And this is what I was talking about with the GPS sort of problem. If you have this idea of where you're trying to go, you have these big delusional dreams, you've allowed yourself to fully get out there and be like, in the most ideal version of my life, I run an 8-figure business, I have time freedom, I'm happily married, I get to travel the world in luxury, whatever that fantasy version looks like for you. Amazing. You have an idea of where you're trying to go. But you cannot possibly get there unless you have a crystal clear understanding of where you're starting from. A GPS doesn't work unless you have both coordinates. And so the first step in actually having success with being really delusional is getting crystal clear on where you're at right now. And I know this isn't quite as fun because it's like kind of bringing down the vibe of living in the fantasy land, but it's really important because we're not just talking about the physical situation of where you live and how much money you have and your relationships. We're also talking about the limiting beliefs that are in your brain holding you back. So I'm going to break down some different things that you can go through, the different categories of your life for coordinates A, where you're at, and B, where you're trying to go. But if you want everything already packaged up for you, I've created a full 30-day workbook based on everything I've learned. It's designed sequentially with the science. You just have to go each day and complete that day's exercises. You can find it in the description right here. Highly recommend downloading it. Okay, so back to it. So if you want to grab a piece of paper, this is a good exercise to start with. And you have, I guess, kind of 3 columns. You have the category and then coordinate A and coordinate B. And in the category, you need things like your financial situation. How much money do you make? How much does it stress you out? What do you do for work? Does it actually fulfill you? What are your relationships looking like? Where do you live? How much energy do you get from your environment? Get all of those physical things down. How do you feel about your body? How do you feel about your fashion? How do you feel about how creative that you're being? Do you have a good support system? Some of these might be great, some of them might not. And again, none of these are meant to temper your goals and be like, oh no, bring you back down to earth. You can't dream those things. You're just getting crystal clear on where you're starting, which is the only way that you can improve. And so this should be an exciting thing, even if it's like a little bit stressful. So write down all those things, and then we need to tap into the beliefs as well. Because most of our lives are run by stories that were not installed by us. If you have limiting beliefs, they might sound like, oh, well, you can't possibly start a business because you're not actually any good with money. Or people like us don't do things like that. Those are for other people. People like me don't have those skills. I'm not actually creative. Nobody wants to listen to what I have to say, so why would I start creating content? They come in all ways, shapes, and forms. And a lot of times we've never actually confronted them directly. We just accept them as fact. And most of the time they're not based on anything at all, okay? And I'll do future videos about breaking through limiting beliefs because it's truly such a massive part of all of this. But first, just understanding where you're at. You need to answer the sort of questions of like, what do I believe to be true about myself, about my potential, about how much money I could possibly make, about how fulfilled I can be in a relationship. And this is where you need to be radically honest. What do you actually believe to be true? You don't believe you'll ever make more than $100,000 a year? Okay, write that down. You don't believe that you ever will be in a fulfilling relationship because you've only had bad relationships in the past? Okay, write that down. And again, we can get into more about how to get through those limiting beliefs, but understanding where you're at is the most important key to being successful with being ridiculously delusional. So once you have all these categories and you've written down where you're at right now, the next step is to figure out where exactly you want to go. And this can be overwhelming sometimes. So I recommend, especially if you're new to letting your brain kind of run free and have these dreams, come up with some sort of a time frame. So maybe like 2 years from now. What is my financial situation? How much money do I make? What is my work situation? How fulfilled am I? What is my relationship situation? So all those questions you answered on the left, write down the true dream scenario version of those. And I'm going to challenge you to come back to this a few different times and keep upping those. Because what I found with people I've worked with in my coaching cohorts is that oftentimes it takes 3 or 4 passes before they actually tap into the root of what they want. Because they think like, oh no, it'd be great to make $50,000 a month. They're like, oh, whoa, like, no, that couldn't be possible. I want to make $10,000 a month because I don't want to be disappointed, because I don't want people to think I'm ridiculous. First of all, you don't have to share this with anybody. But go through a few different times and try and expand it each time. And when you find yourself being like, let me self-edit, no, just write down what it is that you actually want, because the same sort of honesty is required there as required here. Here it's where you're at, here it's what you want. So let yourself actually experience that. And if you need help, you can be like, okay, if I knew I could not fail, what is the life I would be building towards? And describe that exactly. So this is kind of the first part that most people miss, which is that you need to be ridiculously honest about where you're at right now, and then also ridiculously honest about what you want in the biggest possible version of itself. Now, before we get into the science of like how to make your brain work for you in this, I do want to make a quick note about the phrase be realistic. And that is that I don't think there's any such thing as realistic, because there is no such thing as objective reality. Everything in our life is a construct, and most of it is determined by things as innocuous as the zip code you were raised in. Like if you think about it, just traveling to a different country, suddenly the form of monetary exchange changes, like what the actual paper notes look like. The sounds that you make out of your mouth in order to communicate, language is different. What the expectation of a good job is different. What a relationship should look like is different. Architecture, how much you might earn, like literally everything. And that's just going to maybe the country next door. And when you remember that even all of those things were entirely constructed by man and no natural law, and you think that a lot of the time when you're trying to be realistic or someone's telling you to be realistic, all they're saying is, here, borrow my ceiling of what's possible for you and don't go above it. But none of it is based on any objective reality or fact. And so you can kind of just make up what you want realistic to look like. If you decide that $30,000 months are realistic for you, that can be the benchmark that you measure against. Because again, if you were in Monaco, for example, that'd probably be like, yeah, like, it's probably not a great month, but you can make that. Versus somewhere else where that might be 10 times the average amount that somebody makes. So understanding this, that there's no such thing as objective reality, there's no reason for you to be realistic in a way that does not serve you. And if you need more help with this, I recommend, once you get kind of clear on what your big delusional goals are, go find people who have achieved those goals. Ideally, if they're from a somewhat similar background than you or had a somewhat similar path to what you might have to take, get proof into your brain, and we'll talk about this more in the science section, get proof into your brain that this is possible, that this is actually realistic compared to the people you're comparing yourself to. So why would it feel so out of scope of what's possible for you? I really like the phrase of like, love that for you, want that for me. And then also understanding that nothing is unrealistic if other people have it, because that just makes it realistic, at least for them. And if you align your reality to theirs, there you go. And I don't want you to think I'm like ignoring the work required to actually achieve these things, but this is another really big part. If you want to achieve a really big goal, there's going to be a lot of hard work required. So you might as well make it so big that it gives you enough dopamine that you actually want to go for it. And if you actually believe that the goal is possible for you, you're going to be willing to push through the hard times. If no part of you actually believes that this massive goal of becoming an international pop star is achievable, you are not going to be resilient enough. You are not going to be determined enough. You are not going to be able to push through all the bullshit you're going to find on your way to that goal. And so it's actually a practical thing to dream so big and to allow yourself to believe fully in it. A lot of people think, jumping into the science section now, a lot of people think that dopamine is the chemical of pleasure. It's actually the chemical of pursuit. It helps you understand what you want to move toward. And so dreaming really, really, really big releases a lot more dopamine than a tiny dream. Like if you think about like, okay, I want you to try and get a 2% raise next year. It's probably not going to give you much of anything. Versus like, okay, I want you to start building a business that's going to make you 50 grand a month. Like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, and that might not be what you want exactly, but you can see the difference of how that activates differently in your brain, and you can use that to your advantage. So that first part of this, when it comes to using your brain to your advantage, is when you dream big enough, you get such a boost of dopamine that it helps you get started on your path to get there. Like it needs to feel a little bit exciting and a little bit terrifying at the same time for you to actually get moving. And another thing I really like is that when you have such a big goal, it makes the small failures you're inevitably going to have along the way feel so much less significant, right? Like, okay, so what if I messed up this first thing and this fifth thing and this 15th thing and this 20th thing? I know it's probably going to take me 1,000 tries to get to this life-changing situation, so it's fine. And it kind of takes that barrier towards action down a lot because you know that so much more is required. Each little step doesn't have quite so much focus and stress on it. The next thing, way you can kind of like use your brain to your advantage here, is understanding that it doesn't know the difference between an imagined reality and a real memory. They activate the same part of your brain. And so getting to this state of believing that what you want is possible for you is massively impacted by how vividly you can imagine that desired state. So I want you to kind of write out a story of like, okay, in my most delusional goals, dream life scenario, get really vivid on what that actually feels like. What do you see? What do you feel? What can you touch? What are the thoughts in your head? How do you carry yourself? How do you respond to criticism? Everything you can think of, all the different senses that you can activate. And the more time that you can spend in that feeling, the more your brain perceives it as something that is part of your reality and not something that you're fantasizing about. And again, this is the part of manifestation I think a lot of people get wrong. They think like, oh, if I imagine it enough, it's just going to appear. Miraculous things do happen. I do believe in universal synchronicities, but a bigger part of it is when you truly, in your heart, believe something to be achievable and possible for you because you've imagined it so many times that it feels like a memory, you're going to be open to seeing the opportunities that are going to get you there. You're going to be open to doing the work required to get you there. You're not going to have this added burden of like, oh, well, that's not possible for me, so why would I even try? That's gone. You know where you're going and you know where you're starting. And so you just got to keep putting in the work to get there. It's no longer this thing of like completely unrealistic or unattainable for you. So those are two of the biggest things that you can do like scientifically, like dreaming so big that it releases a lot of dopamine and tapping into your brain's ability to accept a new reality as your own. Crazy, crazy, crazy powerful. Another thing I really like to do is rewiring of your brain through hearing your own voice. So if you've ever done any sort of like affirmations or anything like that, I highly recommend going through some exercises where you actually script out a day in your life or talking about a specific situation or a specific accomplishment that you had that reflects the achievement of this big delusional goal, recording it as a voice memo and playing it back to yourself over and over and over again. This goes through that same pathway of reminding your brain that not only is this something you want, this is something that's possible for you. This is something that is likely for you. This is the path that you are on. If you want scripts of how to actually build those out, I have about 10 of them in the workbook as well. So you can go through, they're kind of like Mad Lib style where you can fill them in with what you actually want, but you can get creative and write these down and play them back to you whenever you want. So far we've covered the big things that people get wrong about being delusional, which is one, that it's a skill and it's something anybody can build. It's not just something you're born with or you're not. Two, that you actually have to be really realistic in order to be successfully delusional. So it's kind of that contrast that most people don't really see coming. And then three, how you can use science to your advantage, like literally brainwash yourself into believing that what you want is possible. Two quick parting gifts I want to give you is like little exercises. One of them is keeping an abundance journal. And I know this again sounds a little woo-woo, but even if that's outside of your comfort zone, I highly recommend you do it, because this is the same thing as like the reticular activating system, which determines what actually gets filtered into your reality. So you probably heard the example if I say like, oh, think about a pink Jeep. You're probably going to see a pink Jeep or two on the road tomorrow. It's not that there's suddenly more pink Jeeps, it's that you're suddenly able to process and look for them. And so when you train your brain to see all the amazing opportunities and synchronicities and miracles and abundances in your life that are already happening, you're going to see more. This is going to help you believe more in your ability to attract your goals. This is going to help you meet more people. This is going to help you just be more perceptive to what the universe is trying to give you. I truly believe that once you set a crystal clear intention of where you're trying to go, the universe works to help you get there. And so keep a list, even if it's just in the notes app of your phone, or if you want a physical journal. Anytime anything happens, big or small, you got an unexpected discount, a stranger held the door for you, somebody gave you a compliment, the weather was beautiful, your hair just looked really good, whatever it is, write down all of those things. Because the more you can train your brain to look for them, the more you're going to see them and the more you're going to be presented that from the universe, okay? And then finally, one of my favorite exercises from the workbook, in order to make this really tangible, I call it the press release. So what I want you to do is create an actual press release dated a year from now. Make it look like one you would see online or in a newspaper. Write yourself a headline, a little subheading blurb, and then go through as if it's an interview with yourself, like the reporter is interviewing you about the incredible year you just had, where you just made all of your dreams for the year come true, where your life completely transformed. So you can ask yourself, like, what was your starting point? Where are you now? What was the moment that everything changed? What do you wish you could tell this past version of yourself? What are you most proud of? Where are you going next? And this is a way for you to actually get pen to paper or, fingers to keyboard about where you're trying to go. Best case scenario, a year from now, what would you be so proud to have accomplished? What feels outside of the realm of possibility for you right now, but you're going to actually get concrete on and work towards? And writing this out is just such a fun process. I'd recommend printing it out, reading it to yourself as often as possible. Same sort of thing, teaching your brain to believe that this is the actual course that you're going to take. And then in a year from now, when you've applied all these principles and had an absolutely banger of a year, you're going to read it and be like, damn, I really did that. And that is also an amazing feeling. So again, reminder, if you want everything in a 30-day guidebook it's like 111 pages, everything you need, download it in my description right here. And if you've made it this far and you're looking for more one-on-one support with anything from building more delusional goals to reducing your limiting beliefs to just learning to trust your intuition and your gut and what you actually want, again, instead of just chasing external measures of achievement, send me an email. I do have some openings for one-on-one coaching and I would love to work with you. So anyways, I hope this was helpful. I'm just coming back here on YouTube. I have TikTok. You can see that in my description where I post more regularly. But go ahead and subscribe if you're looking for content like this. I'm going to be sharing new videos very regularly. And thank you so much for being here. Go dream ridiculously delusionally, okay? You got this.